Hello, and welcome to the fifth annual Latinx Games Festival. My name is Jason. I'm the founder and director of Latinx Games Festival, and I'm here with someone that I've known for a minute. Like, I actually believe we were like on the come up around the same time. We were both like scratching and clawing, trying to like get what we were trying to get out of game dev. So I'm gonna toss it over to Hess. What's up, Hess? Introduce yourself. Tell the audience about yourself, maybe some cool games you grew up with, your game dev journey. Do your intro, man. Toss it off to you.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jason, for inviting me on this and just putting on such a dope event. So my name is Hessvacio. I am a Panamanian Egyptian New Yorker born in Queens. And ever since I was 6 years old, I wanted to like make video games. I grew up with the N64 and, was Mario Kart, Super Mario 64. And I was like, yo, people make this for a living. How, when, where? How can I be a digital toy maker? That's been the vibe ever since, trying to do that. And honestly, that's where I kind of I started like wanting to learn programming. And, granted, this was like around the time where there's not a lot of people that look like us, like, even in tech field. So for a while, I was just like, yo, this ain't for me. I actually was a computer science major in college and switched my major to communications, just being like, yeah, the same vibe. You mean I have to be a whole math major just to just to do this? And then it was wild. I love math, but the math department in my school vibe. But it was just kind of like ever since that, like even though I graduated, I was like, yo, I still want to like do this. How do I do this? And like I went into a coding boot camp and like kind of learned development that way and kind of like got it myself into like the web development space doing that. But the thing I love to kind of say is like the first paycheck I ever got in web development. I got that computer being like, oh, do this Unity stuff. I'm gonna crack this out, and that's kind of been working on games ever since. Honestly, that was the computer that made Don't Look Away VR. So it's just historic little Mac Air over here that I still have in the
Wow.
corner.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, I actually remember Don't Look Away. I believe I was there for the game jam that was made at a play. I think it was playcrafting. Yeah, it was one of the
Yeah, play
playcrafting
crafting. Yeah,
events, probably around either 2015 or 2016. I don't know. I know it's been like, now it's been
it's
a
been a
while.
minute.
Now it's been a while. I
It's been
literally feel
two
like that
minutes.
was yesterday or like a year ago, but I know it's been a minute. But like as someone that like as a New Yorker, as someone that's making games in New York, I am curious about what was the motivation for founding Made in Brooklyn Games? Like what prompted you to start that? Because it's in the title, like Made in Brooklyn Games, very much
Yeah.
a New York based game studio with a New York based game developer in New York. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your inspiration for forming that and what was your goals for the studio?
Yeah, absolutely. So Made in Brooklyn Games like kind of started fresh out of college for me. So like this was like 2014 where I was just like, all right, got the whole logo, which means I have the company.
Yeah.
That was, that was the vibe. Like it's not real until you have a logo and it's with the graffiti art on it and stuff like that. But yeah, like it was kind of like what I wanted to do. And this was like 2014 and like Brooklyn, where there wasn't really like the scene that there is now in Brooklyn, where now there's like cool places like Gumbo, and there's like really cool indie bars like Wonderville and stuff like that. But the idea was like, yo, New Yorkers, like people in like a borough such as Brooklyn, can make games, and that's where I kind of like got the like where I wanted. I named it like Made in Brooklyn Games, and ever since like the whole like core of like Made in Brooklyn Games was to create rich, engaging experiences with hints of social commentary. So the idea was like always to kind of like tell the story of like people who really don't get a chance to really like tell their story. So a lot of my games kind of feature that, and also paying it forward. Like a lot of like the people I work with are like people who normally wouldn't get a chance to be working in games, and we just kind of like go in this like ragtag kind of like, we're gonna make this, we're gonna set the world on fire in a good way. And yeah, that's kind of like how Don't Look Away VR started. It was just like we went to a coffee shop every Wednesday and just kind of like chipped away at the game until like it became a thing. And we released it on the Oculus uh, store. This was like the old days, Oculus Go, Gear
Oh, wow.
VR. Yeah, like I said, it's been 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how long it's been. And yeah, like it became like this little sleeper hit where, like we got like over 300K downloads at this point. So probably should make a sequel at this point. But yeah, people really seem to like that. And we just kind of kept making cool content ever since. A lot of what we've done is in the VR and AR space, emerging media stuff. But a lot of other stuff we've done was like using cool, engaging technology from like showcasing our work at Tribeca Games using Watson Tech, all the way to creating a like a really cool like instant game experience to that we showcased at GDC. And like what's really cool is like the emerging media of like VR, AR, MR is kind of like at the heart of what we do, but like we love the aspect of just making like cool, funny, engaging games, throughout the platforms.
It's you mentioned, don't look away, right? And I think it's kind of we touched upon it. That put a lot of attention and got the gears moving for Made in Brooklyn Games. That got the wheels turning into making this stuff, and like now you're like making games, right? You got yourself a hit. You got to follow that up. You come out swinging. Museum Multiverse. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that. What was the inspiration for Museum Multiverse? Like, how did it get started? There's always like an idea, then and it develops something. Sometimes you got to pare it down or expand it out. Like, I'm actually really curious. Like, what was the origin story behind it? It's a really fascinating title. So tell me about it. What inspired Museum Multiverse?
Yeah, sure. So Museum Multiverse is a multi-dimensional virtual reality platformer. And what the heck does that mean? Basically, the idea is like every painting that you jump into within the story actually changes the way you play the game. So you can go from playing a third-person platforming VR experience all the way to a first-person exploration experience, which like every painting changes the genre almost and the art style. So very ambitious, but I think people really like it. My mom likes it. I'm kidding. There's like
Bonafide
we
hit.
would like yeah, I know, right? I got one sale. But there's we actually won like a couple of really cool awards from just like the game, like the W3 award for best in show. The People's Film Fest for Best VR, and also we were Webby nominated for our game too. So it's I guess it's more than my ma at this point, but yeah, the idea kind of came from this aspect of like mixing two of my passions that I really like. So I was really into just like exploring museums in New York City. Really love the MoMA. Really love the Guggenheim and Museum of Moving Images. Fun fact: this is actually like based off of something from the Museum of Moving Images, but we'll talk
Oh,
about
nice.
that later. But the idea was like um, every time I walked past there, this is me in high school, college, so on and so forth. I would always kind of like wonder what's like the world like if you can jump into a painting, like what would like the story be there? Like what if you can kind of just like experience that for a little bit? And also huge fan, as I mentioned, from like Super Mario 64. So I wanted to kind of like make this love letter almost to like the console that got me in the game. So it's a mixture of just kind of like um, along with it being like, genre changing and stuff like that, a lot of like the game is a lot of like uh love letter levels to like just like N64 genres, like like the 3D platforming of Super Mario 64. There's a whole new DLC that's being developed where it's like it's a virtual reality like shooter giving you the vibes of Star Fox 64.
Oh,
The
nice.
first person exploration portion is a lot of like first person exploration pieces in like like those games that you used to play for the N64, along with just kind of like traveling through the forest, feeling like Legend of Zelda, and like that's kind of like the magic of like bringing these two passions together and seeing how it mixes, and that's kind of what Museum Multiverse is in a little what it is at this point. And what's cool is also it tells the narrative of like this little kid Jr. kind of like gaining his confidence to just like fight the darkness that is corrupting the museum. So along with you know like true 90s fashion, I'm over here like inspired by Cage Master and just kind of like that
Nice.
storyline kind of going through this whole thing too. So yeah, it's 90s bonanza over here.
I mean, that's what a great time actually to grow up with video games with the Nintendo 64, like that era of like early like 3D graphics cards within PC, like PC gaming really becoming like a real thing. Not that it wasn't
Yeah.
before, but the games are looking amazing. Yeah, the N64, yeah, PlayStation, and in
Mhm.
retrospect, yeah, the Sega Saturn. I love it, but back then it wasn't too hot. But that was a really, I mean, I love it now,
It was
right?
big in
But
Japan, you know?
yeah, it was huge in Japan. Titty fighters galore, you know. And you can see a lot of YouTube videos as to why Sega. And I mean, I love Sega. I have like a special place in my heart for Sega, even though I'm a Nintendo kid. So when you talk
Yeah.
about like the Nintendo 64 and Mario 64, Star Fox, Zelda, all these games, I think that's like a really great time to fall in love with video games. And then what's even more interesting is you pour like the New York, like like the New York flavor in there, right? Like
Yeah.
the abundance of museums that New York City has, and that energy that go into a museum can bring that discovery when there's like a new exhibition or something, right? So like it's really cool to hear that was your inspiration and fusion. And I guess on the topic of New York too, like New York City has its own energy, its own feel. There really is, born and raised biased, right? But I really, and I'm in LA right now, and I've lived in a couple of cities and been around the world a little bit. There is no other city, maybe biased. There's no other city like New York City. It is just a very unique city with its own special brand of energy. And being a New York City based game developer, I'm really curious, like what what is the it's also been a while since I've been to New York and been to some of the events there. It's been a few years, the pandemic and everything like that. And
Yeah.
I just been out here. What's New York gaming scene like? Because you're also coming up at a time when you sort of entered at a time when it was still in its infancy, right? You had like the NYU stuff, you had Playcraft, you had these game jams, you had like all these meetups, but everything was still fragmented. There was nothing going on. And you and a lot of folks came in at a time and it sort of like elevated each other. What's the New York City game development scene like? If you could just summarize it a bit.
Yeah. I would say, during that come up we were talking about, it just felt like, that first act of Alexander Hamilton out here, just all of these greats like slowly coming up, and you're over here just bumping elbows with them. I learned Unity from like the Kurt, the dude that made Pop the Lock. That game is still in Dave and Buster's now,
Nice.
like it's pretty wild. And like this aspect of like, instead of us, like the California aspect is like, you go and make your startup in a garage. Nah, we did ours in a coffee shop. That's the that's the New York garage out here. And yeah, it's just like it was there's such an energy um like there. And it's still here. Like it's kind of like there's the build up there. As I mentioned, there's like really amazing places like Gumbo, like there's Game Devs of Color who just like, like they're amazing and like just
Seventh year, I
really
believe, this year.
supporting the yeah. And there's like just it was it was at that time and still is, because like there's still like these other things that have popped up. Like I mentioned the bar Wonderville, like, you'd have never seen like a bar with indie arcade cabinets ever,
Yeah.
like before. And now that's just like a thing. It's like barcade, but indie game developers cabinets. And just it was kind of like, you didn't realize it at the time, but it was just like this magical, like the good old days where you're just like, you are working with these really cool people that, are just like, just like trying to be the very best that no one ever was, kind of vibe, all together. And we all kind of like slowly made our own games. And honestly, even though like I keep talking about, oh, don't look away made all these downloads, I still don't think I made my Michael Jackson Thriller yet. Like I think I still need to. I'm still on the path there. Like maybe it's Museum Multiverse, hopefully, but maybe it's another like the next title. But the it was it there's still this amazing energy. There's still this amazing collaboration in New York City. And because like the game development circle is like, pretty like tight knit, it's just kind of like you're able to just be in it and like, and like everyone's super helpful. Everyone wants to help because everyone wants to like people to succeed, and like that um like every success is kind of like, oh, I know that dude, hey, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And just that's, I feel like, the New York City vibe. Another thing that I wanted to point out is like, I think what's really amazing about like, making a game studio or making games in New York um, is the aspect of like capturing or trying to capture that New York in your game. Like, for example, the last level of Museum Multiverse, people like went to the Brooklyn Museum, they might catch the vibe of like where that whole structure was based off of. The like one of my friends, um, Sam Eng, like his whole game, the skate story is based off just like him skating in New York City. Like I always like to think of like, how like Martin Scorsese kind of like captures New York in these
Yeah.
really cool ways in film. Like I feel like us New York game developers can kind of like capture our game and like have games capture that feel in games, and
Oh, 100%.
yeah, I think like
100%.
um, it's an amazing thing and it's an amazing feeling because like very much like those films like Scorsese's The Warriors and stuff like that, you're capturing New York at this like one point in time, and you're actually like mixing it with your feelings on how things are and stuff like that, and just it's amazing chocolate and peanut butter mix that makes really cool experiences.
Yeah, I actually like how you kind of highlighted and pointed that out. Like a lot of these games that do come out of New York, even if they're not explicitly like, this is New York City, the game, right? It has that energy
The
that sort of just,
sequel.
yeah, right. New
This
York City 2.
time it's
DLC comments,
personal.
right? Oh gosh. It's funny because when I look at some of these games and like us knowing a lot of the game developers and being there for like the origin of these games, sometimes we just happen to be there when they make the first build of the game, or we're testing these builds out over the years, or whatever it is where you're seeing this. And like I think, and only in retrospect now do I realize, yes, that was like that early on. It's still special now, but it was a special time when everyone was sort of like making their thing. And when I look back at a lot of these games, I see New York in them. I don't know if a lot of people do. If you don't know it, maybe because I'm like really close to a lot of these games and the game developers, I can see it. But you pointed that out, and like thinking about it now, it's like I really wish there was like maybe a better way. Maybe you could do this. I already got my own conference. Maybe you set something up where it's like badass video games made in New York, and here's why these are New York made games of the conference. I don't know, but like I really
Right.
feel like there's a lot of stories behind behind New York uh based developed games that aren't really told, and they have a special something about them that people that play them, even if you can't really place it, it's like I really just think it's that you mentioned like the coffee, like making games in a coffee shop, right? I saw gosh, I forgot, so I feel so bad, I forgot his name now. He's a pretty I think it's maybe his Twitter or X is Ra, or like RA or something. But
Mhm.
he saw him on the train. He was programming a game like on the train. I just like accidentally like bumped into him like on a train. I'm just like, you working on a game? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, I'm like, when'd you stop? He's like, oh, I missed it. Like, he's like, I'm just gonna write it back and I go back. So I really I forget his name, but like I was just like, I don't even know if the game he was working on came out. I just remember being like, wow, that is, you're not going to get that in like a California or Japan or Europe. Like you're gonna get that in New York City. So like I don't know. I just thought that was pretty cool. And obviously like my
Yeah,
bias and love for New York, I always gotta like kind of hold on to that, and like I want to highlight as much as New York as I can. But in developing these stories too, like they're fantastic, amazing, over the top stories, right? So something like a multiverse, like a museum multiverse and everything, like has like a narrative, right? Like you have a focus there with the story. How do you incorporate elements of storytelling and narrative into a VR AR game development environment? Like can you tell us a little bit about how you successfully can blend storytelling with the immersive experience of VR and AR?
sure. Very, I hear confession time, nerd time, but also New York, strict, very New York thing. A lot of like telling that story in um, VR, AR, MR, kind of comes from like theater design and the aspect of like, along with having all of these things happen around you, having a focus point, having that like, having the light and sound to kind of like draw users' attention to like the key points that you want them to experience. The story aspect, I think, is, like always wanted to make cool stories and stuff like that. And like, that's kind of like something that, you know, um, like that comes with just like the typical aspect of making a story. But the telling of the story um, has a lot of like elements of like just straight up theater design. And it's really cool because, New York City, just 42nd Street, all the way to like what 50th Street is just theater row all day. And then like, just a lot of like the stuff that like I learned from the watching these plays actually like really helped me um like tell a really cool experience and like guide the players like view and like have them feel like everything has happened, but also like I understand where I need to be looking at certain points. Um, I remember there was like this really cool play called like Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark that had like this really cool sequence at the end where it's just Spider-Man and the Green Goblin are just like flying all over the stage. And that inspired parts of like the fight scene that's like at the end of Museum Multiverse, where it's just like there's a lot of things happening, but like you can kind of clearly see where the things are happening from like the sound, the spotlight, and just really crazy how as much as we're like, making like, like transforming the media and transforming all of like, making like this new emerging medium here. Um, it's important to kind of look at history and just kind of see how that can kind of guide you to make like a really engaging experience, and how like something as old as like theater, like Greek days, is over here helping us make the next medium, the next computing platform over here.
Yeah, no, I mean it, we're definitely in a special time, especially with like VR, AR, MR. Like there's a I mean, I always try to shout them out. There's like this game I really like called Pixel Ripped. There's like
Oh,
a
it's so
trilogy. Yeah,
good.
I love Pixel
Yes.
Ripped. I love the when I was mentioning like immersive stuff, like that's that's stuff like that. Your games, like that's what I want to see more in VR. I really want the environment to really like pull me in and not just be like this really cool screen that's everywhere, right?
Mhm.
Like your game, that game, and a lot of the best VR games out there really, does it sound like campy and cheese, but like really put you in the game. But like you really feel like you're in the game and you're lost in the environment, and you're not like, whoa, my second monitor is over here, or my coffee. You're just like, I am in this right now. I don't have a meeting coming up in an hour. I don't have to take out the garbage. My bills aren't coming up. You're like in this world. You are that character. And I think that's some of the best experiences out there. And I feel like you're right there with a lot of the folks that are, because it's still an early, I mean, VR really has been around for decades. Even the precious N64 came out a year after Virtual Boy, right? If you really think about it that way, it came out a year after Virtual
Yeah.
Boy, which is the first consumer like headset that you can buy for, I don't know, it was like $1.75 or whatever. But it's still like, VR is not new, but we're really over the last decade, I think, finally entered that point where like it's in your home. You can buy games for it. There's stores that support, like it's not going away, but it's still really early. We're sort of, I feel like, in the caveman drawing days of VR. So I'm really looking forward to seeing like what you can do with some of these emerging headsets, like what you and your team can do with like I'm really looking forward to like, you've had like, you've had like this like really good run with some quality stuff, and like I can't wait to see the next 10 years, the next 20, 30, 40, 50, you know what I mean? Like I can't wait to see what you got coming out, because these next gen headsets are really like, I'm excited by them. Do you have any, if you don't, it's fine. Did you have any, we'll kind of like leave everyone with this, the future. Do you have any opinions on some of these upcoming, like some of the upcoming headsets from Meta, or like the Apple Vision Pro? Like what do you
Yeah.
think about some of the up and coming headsets, and also just like VR, AR, MR in general? Like what does the future hold for us, and how does it
Yeah.
relate to games?
Yeah, I guess there's no one can tell the future, but like I think what's really cool that I'm seeing here is like, this aspect with mixed reality of just having like the game kind of be part of like your like the place that you're living, your living room set and stuff like that. This idea of like, instead of having JR being in this siloed world, there's like actually the ability of him being like the whole game taking place in your living room. And that's like a really cool kind of idea, concept. And there's like, I'm really excited to see like, what we come up with, because like I know that's like the one idea, but like there's so many cool ideas you can kind of do with that, where it's just like you're if you like you're if like we can understand how your living space and stuff like that works, how we can kind of like craft cool games and narratives around it. There's going to be good and bad portions, because like one day we're all going to have like these AR glasses, and then like the whole world is going to be augmented, and like it's going to be kind of cool to think of how you can kind of gamify navigation, or gamify like just particular aspects of your life, because gamification of that turns the mundane fun, but also um, being mindful that we need to build this stuff responsibly, because as we saw, like what, a decade, 15 years ago, I guess at this point, or something like that, we weren't like super like addicted to like phones and doom scrolling and stuff like that. And if we make, like, we put the computer closer to our eyes, how like
Danger.
we need to figure out how to like build responsibly to make sure
Yeah.
that we're not like creating even more of this like technology addiction. So making cool, rich, engaging experiences is our vibe that's needed made in Brooklyn Games with social commentary. So of course, maybe we might make a nod to that one day. But like the idea is, how do we make cool experiences that are fun, engaging, help you, or then kind of like hinder, or like kind of keep you, uh, like because keep you sucked into the digital world. Like we want, like, the world is a beautiful place. You should be outside. You should kind of enjoy it too, along with like enjoying like the way we build it and augment like the world like that. So just augmenting it in a sustainable way is something that is really important to me in the studio, and um, just how to make cool games that people enjoy, but don't need to like check in every 5 seconds to like really like be uh, like win, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I wouldn't mind seeing JR like chilling around my like on my desk or like sitting on my monitors or just like chilling, and then like somehow my calendar is like connected and it knows I have like an hour break, and maybe I
Yeah,
put
be
like
like,
gotta walk outside, and then JR's like, yo, we gotta take a walk, like it's like you lack vitamins, go to this juice shop, drink, what I mean? Like, but because that's kind of where it might end up going, right?
yeah,
Except it might be a bit more predatory, or like like a bit more like consumerism focus, or more about like extracting the dollar out of your wallet, right? So like there's so many ways it can
exactly.
go, or just create that infinity of like I am constantly immersed in the
Mhm.
negative part of the digital world, because no matter what, when it's finally when there's like the killer app that gets us all in there, hardware and then the software, when those two things finally happen, we're gonna love it for like 2 years, and then finally the evil, because we stumble on it. I don't think these things are made with bad intentions. We sort of just figure it out after, like, yo, I haven't taken this thing off in like a month, I'm tired, like I'm feeling
Yeah,
ill, or like I
exactly.
feel bad, like with social media, like I don't feel good on here anymore, like I kind of, I
Yeah,
don't really, I have to deal with social because of marketing purposes, marketing the event, I get gigs through it, and I sometimes just want to check out, like, who are the people that I dig, what are they doing, what do they have coming out, what's going on with them. But yeah, I mean, developing these new experiences responsibly is going to be key. And I think if you just look at, we have enough information, enough data, enough hindsight, and I think enough knowledge, especially with like your gen, my gen, with like growing up around technology, but still growing up and seeing like where we're at now. We didn't have it growing up. So seeing like that evolution and knowing what the benefits are and what the negatives are, I think if either somehow we all get together, or like, made in Brooklyn Games, if you just make new experiences with like keeping things cool, chill, and making sure you're not unintentionally putting evil out into the world, I think we'll
yeah,
be fine. I think with you at the helm, I think we'll be good to go. I think we'll be
yeah.
good.
We're gonna be the good guys, making the experiences that will help you or hinder you, and especially when we get big, we're not going to take the whole don't be evil out of our name like some companies did. So
I would get
we're
scared if
like
somebody had that up and they took it off. I'd be like, oh no,
yo,
that's the
right.
actual term.
I mean, that happened to us companies, so I'm gonna shut
Yeah.
up, but it's just that's
Sponsor.
uh that's that's uh that's not gonna be us, so
No doubt.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was great. Thank you for being a part of this. It was great catching up with you, and getting kind of breaking down your origin and your background, and the cool experiences. You also provided some great insights on New York, the game development scene, and also just like VR, AR, MR in general. So I thank you so much for being a part of this talk. Thank you for just putting out some really cool stuff out into the world. Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug real quick? Anything that you want to like let the audience know what's going on with you before we head out?
Yeah, sure. So, Museum Multiverse is coming out this fall. You can find me on all of the social medias. I am the only Hessvacio in the world, so
Nice.
got all of my handles, over here. And yeah, I think I just I like if you have a like a gloomy day and like the like our content just kind of makes your day a little better. That's our vibe. That's like what we want to kind of put in the world. So that's just kind of like if that happens, we have like a lot of like, we have a lot of cool content uh along with Easy and Multiverse coming out that's just like kind of free and just want to kind of like bring that into, the world just because, a lot of times, like the struggle's real out here. So, like just giving that adding that positivity to the world is just something that stay tuned for. There'll be free content that we just kind of want to like share with people, just you know just because. So yeah, uh, uh, stay on our channel, stay on our social media tags. Also, Made in Brooklyn Games, Made in BK Games on Instagram as well as Facebook. So yeah, well, you'll see all of our cool stuff being like shouted out there and. Yeah, just hope y'all have like a fantastic day. Thanks for listening to me rant over here. Appreciate Jason for inviting me over.
Anytime, anytime. Thank you for sharing your insights, and thank you all for watching this talk. Thank you for being a part of the 5th annual Latinx Games Festival. I'll see you around.